A living man can prove his innocence, but the dead man is at the mercy of liars. Welcome to sign 56. You're welcome to sign 57 of section 7 of chapter 16 of the Holy Quran. Chapter 16 being represented by the B, Anali B. Sign 57. Let's go. ويجعلون لله البنات سبحانه ولهم ما يشتهون ولهم ما يشتهون. And they assign daughters for God. ويجعلون assign لله for God albanati daughters. Subhanahu, glory be to him. Walahum ma yashtahun. Walahum ma yashtahun. And for themselves what they desire. Glory be to him, exclamation mark, dash, and for themselves what they desire. Walahum ma yashtahun. Commentary 2082 or commentary 2082. 2082. Some of the pagan Arabs called angels and daughters of Allah. Some of the pagan Arabs called angels and daughters of God. In their own life, they hated to have daughters, as explained in the next two verses. We'll go there. They practiced female infanticide, full stop, in their state of perpetual war signs. In their state of perpetual war signs were a source of strength to them. Semicolon. Daughters only made them subject to humiliating raids. Subject to humiliating raids. RAIDS. And that's commentary 2082 to sign 57. We now go to sign 58, which we are anticipating. Because it's in the next verse, in the next two verses, 58 and 59, where they assign daughters to God. So, sign 58. What is a bashra? What is a bushra? What is a bushra? أحدهم بالأنثى. What is a bushra? أحدهم بالأنثى. زل وجههم زل وجهه مشوادا. When news is brought to them, what is bushra? News is brought to them. What is a bushra? AdaM is brought to them, one of them. Bashra AdaM bil untha, of the birth of a daughter. Of the birth of a female child, unta, of the birth of a female child, zalla wajhuhu mushwadan. His face darkens, and he is filled with inward grief. See, the sex that brought birth to them, they hate that sex that they give birth to. In other words, we are all brought forth by women, but when we give birth to women, we don't like them. Can you imagine that? Mm. Uh, Mushwudan, uh, uh, with darkness. His face darkens, and he is filled with inward grief. Filled with inward grief. Inward grief. Mushridan. Or muswadan. Mm. Zalla darkens. Their faces are darkened. Zalla muswudan. Zalla muswudan, with inward grief. Wahum kazimun. Wahum kazimun. Sorry, wahum kazimun. That's with inward grief rather. Wahum kazimun. That's rather with inward grief. Their face darkens. One of them, a female has his face darkens, and he's filled with inward grief. So his face darkens is zalamu wachuhu wa mushwadan. Wahum kazimun, and he is filled with inward grief. Wahum kazimun, and he is filled with inward grief. Pardon me for the error. There's no commentary to that. We go to 69, still continuing with female child, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going backwards, thinking I'm reading English. يتورى يتورى من قوم من سواء ما بش ما بشر به ما بشر به. With shame does he hide himself from the people because of the bad news he has had. Can you imagine? When someone gives birth to a female child, he is rather grieved, he's rather sorry, and then hides himself from public. And hides himself from public for giving birth to a female child because they will mock him, they will taunt him. So Abdullah gave birth to a daughter or to a female. And their Abdullah is not the Abdullah of today, it's the Abdullah of servant of their gods. So they use good names, they assign God's name to evil things. Because of the bad news they have, they because of the bad news he has had. min sawi ma bushra bihi. Mm. Uh, and uh, ayumsikuhu ayumsikuhu ala hunnin ayumsikuhu ala hunni am yet suhu fil tarabin am yasuhu fi tarabin am yet suhu fi turabin, not sand, turabin, not turubin. Fi turabin, yeah, food, fi turabin. I am suh am yet suhu fi turabin. Uh, shall he retain it? Hmm? I am sukuhu. Shall he retain it? I am sukuhu. Alahuni. Should he retain it on suffering and contempt? Should he retain it on contempt? Should he retain it on suffering and contempt? Suffering and is in the bracket. Shall he retain the child on suffering and contempt or bury it in the dust? Turabin. I am suhum ala hunni, on shame and contempt, on on sufferance and contempt. Ala hunni am yet suhu fi turabin. Am yet suhu fi turabin. Or bury it in the sand. These are the thoughts that come to this mind when he comes out and says, my son give, and they know that it was female child, and people around know that he is a female child. He begins to ponder, should I bury it or should I live with contempt among my people? These were Arabs. And I think these traits are still in them today. Some of them, a portion of them, Arabs. So you see, I don't know why people think the Quran is for the Arabs. It's not for the Arabs only. It's for all of us. Mm? It came rather because of them, or partly because of them. Their pagan, uh, for their pagan practice before the coming of the Prophet. Mm. Allah sa'a ma yahkumun. Allah sa'a ma yahkumun. Ah, what an evil choice they decide on. What an evil choice they decide on. The choice is in brackets. Ah, what an evil choice they decide on. And the commentary is 2085. 2085. Mm. I think I left out some commentaries. 2083, 84, and 85. Sorry, it's not just one commentary to stand 59, but three. It's threefold. So 2083, and that commentary is against retain it, whether to retain the female child or not. It, the word it is in inverted commas. It, in this and the following clause, refers grammatically to the news. It, should they retain the news? Actually, it's a female child, but it says it in this and following clause refers grammatically to the news. Ma bushru, ma bushira bihi, ma bushira bihi, ma bushira bihi. It. Okay, that is in inverted commas, ma bushira bihi. In meaning, so full stop. In meaning, it refers to the female child. Okay, then I'm right. I'm not wrong. In meaning, it refers to the female child. Dash. by the figure of speech known as metonymy, known as metonymy. Metonymy. Metonymy is spelled Metonymy. 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 So now we go to Psalm 2084 to the same, we go to comment 2084 to the same Psalm 59. Compare 81, and here I have capital IXX1. Signs 8 to 9, sign 8 to 9, compare 81 IXSI, sign 8 to 9. We are here together, it's far away. The practice of female infanticide is condemned. Is condemned in scathing terms. Is condemned in scathing terms. Full stop. Female children used to be buried alive by the pagan Arabs. So you can imagine if immigrants go to Saudi Arabia today and they are killed, they are molested and killed and treated very, very roughly. That's an inheritance from the pagans, from pagan Arabs. It's happening today. Okay. We go to 2085. That's the last of the three commentaries. And that 85 is against what? It's against decision they decide on. 85. It was an evil choice. Yes, it was an evil choice to decide on. It was an evil choice to decide on. Either alternative dash to keep the poor girl as a thing of sufferance and contempt, bringing disgrace on the family, or to get rid of it by burying it alive was cruel, and indefensible, was cruel and indefensible. So you can imagine if such a thing happens today, you give birth to your child and then the whole of your community put you to shame or regard you as something of shame, of something, someone odd from them. Then you decide, should I bury it? Should I keep it and be suffering, continue suffering? And finally, you may decide to bury it. That was the life of the pagan Arabs before the coming of the Quran. All right. Or to get rid of it by burying it alive was cruel and indefensible. Now that was sign 20, that was comment 2085 to sign 59. We now go to sign 60, which happens to the last sign, which happens to be the last sign of section 7. Then للذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة مثل سواء للذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة مثل سواء مثل سوء not سواء مثل سوء. To those who believe not in the hereafter applies the similitude of evil. To those who believe not in the hereafter, applies the similitude of evil. وَلِلَّهِ مَثَلُ al-a'la. To God applies the highest similitude. Walillahi matul ala, and to God applies the highest similitude. Wahuwa azizul hakim. Wahuwa azizul hakim. For he is the exalted in power, full of wisdom. For he, God, is the exalted in power, full of wisdom. Exalted here is spelled with A and not U. So 2086 is the commentary. The word matal, we called it matal, no? The word matal ordinarily denotes a similitude, comma, but in the context of the present verse, especially with reference to God, it signifies his sublime attributes. It applies his sublime attributes rather than a similitude. Then we are told to compare XXX 27. That's 30, chapter 30, verse 27. We're yet to get there. And that commentary brings us to the end of section of sign 60. That's commentary to sign 60 to section 7 of chapter 16 of the Holy Quran. When we come back, God willing, we shall go to section 8, which begins with sign 61. Thank you very much. May God be with you all. Ila lakai. Bye bye. Au revoir.